Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 5 of the DLF Commissioner Chronicles on the DLF YouTube channel. I am Nathan Powell. I am a commissioner in the fantasy football industry, and I am doing this series to talk through some of the major points of being a commissioner, league settings, and how to implement them as the commissioner. So far, and make sure you check out episodes 1 through 4 if you have not. We have covered everything from bylaws to setting up your league to Dynasty startup auctions, all those good things. All right, now let's talk about trading future picks and assets. That's going to be the focus of today, is what the commissioner needs to do in order to implement rules for trading future picks and assets. First, one of the most important parts of trading future picks or assets in your Dynasty league is you have to define what can be traded. A lot of times people will assume things are tradable if you don't explicitly say they are not tradable, or vice versa. Some might assume that a pick, for example, one time when I didn't explicitly say future picks are available to be traded, someone like, I didn't know we could trade our future picks halfway through the startup. So future picks are tradable, but you have to define what is tradable. So is current money tradable? Is current blind bid money? Is current startup money? Is current whatever it may be? You have to define each currency or each thing that is available and whether it is tradable. So this gives you the clear picture of the people in your league, what they're allowed to trade, what they aren't allowed to trade. Some of that might seem a bit obvious, but a lot of things you do as a commissioner are stating the obvious and just having it as a backup, like, hey, I told you guys this was tradable, or I told you this wasn't tradable. So in terms of what that is, obviously often, most of the time, future picks are tradable. One thing that is often not tradable is future blind bid dollars. One thing that I do recommend, that especially the less complicated, the easier this is to do, but if it can't be traded on MFL, I highly suggest not making it tradable in the league, because when you add things that aren't tradable on MFL, you have to end up tracking that yourself, and you have to, police whether people are trading it when they shouldn't be trading it, or whether people know that they can trade it if they can. So whatever you can do, try to make whatever you have as tradable on your platform, whether it be MFL or Sleeper. Try and avoid things that the platform doesn't support making it tradable. And obviously, there's some scenarios where that's not really an option when you have more complex Dynasty leagues. But I do feel that, certainly as a beginning commissioner, you want to have the least amount of issues possible, and making things tradable that are not tradable on the platform creates more issues. So you have to define what's tradable in terms of current assets and future assets, whether it be picks, blind bid dollars, other things that you could have tradable in your leagues. Now, once you define what is tradable, then the next step is defining how far out it can be traded. I recommend for all commissioners, whether it be new or the most veteran, make all your assets that are tradable in the future only 1 year out tradable. So the reason for that is that when you have 2, or I've even seen 3 or 4 years out in terms of tradable picks, that leads to people over trading their future. That leads to people trading all their future picks and leaving the roster, which makes it harder to fill. And we'll go into it a little bit later of ways to make that easier on yourself as the commissioner. But in general, I do limit it to 1 year in advance as far as trading picks, because it often leads to super teams in one direction and terrible teams in the other. And part of your job as commissioner, and certainly you're going to get super teams and bad teams either way, but if you can limit those things, that is for the betterment of the league. You do want to promote league balance. You want to promote the most balanced or parity league, where you don't have the same person winning every year or the same person getting the 101 every year. So in order for you to do that, I highly suggest only making draft picks tradable 1 year in advance. That way, teams don't mess themselves up by trading too far in advance, or teams don't benefit from those doing that same thing. So once you have decided how far in advance you can trade picks, you have to talk about payment and rules based on trading future assets. Some people say if you trade any future pick, then you must pay half of the future buy-in. Some say if you trade any future pick, you have to pay the whole thing, and some relegate that to first-round picks. I will say, as a commissioner, I do not have any sort of payment rules based on the trading of future picks. And the number one reason for that is that two things. I feel when you have that payment requirement in your leagues based on trading future picks, it does discourage people from trading future picks and thus discourages trading. So I don't like to discourage trading in my leagues. And the reason why I think it discourages trading is that, in my limited experience in leagues that require that, I'm always thinking, do I really want to pay this buy-in right now? Or do I really want to pay half this buy-in right now? And just that small thought in your head might deter you from trading that future pick. And some might say, well, that's a positive, people not trading the future picks if they don't want to pay their buy-in. But I want to do everything I can to not deter trading. And I think that adding that payment rule in does deter trading a little bit. And even that smallest little bit is, enough that I don't want to do it. The other element of it is that there's an enormous amount of policing that goes on with that. Basically, every time a future pick's traded, you got to talk to somebody. And one way to fix this, and this doesn't really even have to do with trading future picks, but if you only have picks traded 1 year in advance and you always have that 1 year deposit in, that's one way to avoid, the goose chase of saying, you traded your future first, now send me the money. Now, I've had commissioners tell me it's worth it, that, when you require that payment on future picks or future first, that as a commissioner, it's worth it to go on that chase. I don't think it is. I honestly, if I were to implement it, I would just implement it for everyone just has to pay for 1 year in advance. And so in 2020, everyone would have already paid for 2021. And then once we get to 2021, everyone's going to pay for 2022. That's how I would go about doing payments if I were to be requiring payment in advance for trading future picks. Just require it for everybody and not just the future picks. Now, the biggest question that I had when I talk about trading future picks isn't what can you trade, how far out you can trade it, or the payment rules. It's how to combat trade and dumps. How do I combat someone from trading all their picks and then leaving the league? Now, there isn't an exact science to do this other than the payment stuff. But the best way I avoid having to beg an owner to join a league, it's not through the payment, it's through dispersals. Now, I feel like it's pretty common these days that if you have two openings in a league, that ends up being a dispersal. So I don't think that I have to talk about that too much. But I do have a version of Ryan McDowell's second chance in all of my leagues. I don't have it that you can join the dispersal whenever. I have it in the event an owner leaves the league, there is a second chance, or you have the opportunity to join the dispersal in a second chance auction. So for those unfamiliar with second chance, basically it's you throw all your assets into a pool, whether it be a draft or an auction, and you draft with the new owners, or in this normal second chance, it could be anyone else who joined the auction or the draft. But for my purposes, I don't give the safety net of you can always have it to throw in. You always have it to throw in. You only throw it in. You only have the option to throw into a dispersal when there's an owner that leaves the league. But as far as combating trade and dumps, it's less of a concern when you have a dispersal. Now, obviously, the larger the league, the larger the dispersal will likely be, and thus the less of a concern one bad team without picks will be. But the number one way to combat trade and dumps is a dispersal or second chance rule, because you're going to have a less difficult time, even if it's two bad teams combining with each other. I have found that new owners are much more likely to join a league if they have a dispersal with two bad teams rather than just taking over one bad team. So adding a dispersal, whether it be a second chance draft or auction, or just multiple owners leaving the league at the same time, having a dispersal is the biggest and best way to combat trade and dumps, someone trading all their future picks and then leaving the league. And of course, the other thing is making sure that you are only doing 1 year in advance trading picks, because even with the dispersal, if you're trading 2-3 years in advance in the new team, and the team leaving, trade dollar picks, it does make it a little bit harder to fill. So there's always that promise of like, okay, you might not have these 2020 picks, but at least you have your 2021 picks. So you're only at the most a year away from making draft picks that are your own without making any trades. So yeah, as far as combating trade and dumps, your number one combat is a dispersal, and number two is, of course, only making picks tradable 1 year in advance. So as a commissioner, make sure that you define everything. Define what's tradable, define what is not, define how far out it is tradable and why, and then define payment rules. If you have payment rules based on a first round pick being traded or a pick being traded, make sure you have those in your bylaws. Make sure that you have make sure you enforce them, that if you have the rule, like when you trade a future pick, you must make your payment, then it's time. Like when you see that pick traded, okay, now you contact the owner. Hey, I need your payment for 2020, 2021. But also, like I described, the best way to go about doing that, if you're going to go with the payment route, is just require a 1 year deposit from everybody. That way you're not chasing everybody around saying, I need your payment whenever they make a future pick trade. So those are that's the discussion on trading future picks and assets. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the DLF YouTube channel and check us out every week on Monday mornings on DLF Commissioner Chronicles. Thank you so much. Have a great week.